Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Womoney Matters. I have someone on the show today who has the ability to convince you both in mind and in heart. What her arguments could not do in a courtroom, I'm sure her music can do to your heart. Please welcome Bindu Subramaniam. She is an established singer in the world music space and is co founder of the Sapa Music Academy, which runs hundreds of schools across the country and is one of the fastest growing media of learning classical music in our country right now. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bindu.
Thank you so much for having me, Aarti. I'm excited and a little nervous because I know nothing about money or money matters, but I'm just happy to see you after so long.
Well, it's not always about money matters, right? Because you've had a phenomenal journey. And I think it would be really interesting for the people watching this interview to hear a little about that journey. So tell us, you come from such a rich heritage of Indian music. Your family is so well known in music, not just in India, but through the world. Your father is the most famous violinist in the world, Dr. L. Subramaniam. And your stepmother, Kavita Krishnamurthy, is, I think, one of the most popular singers in Indian music history. So, how does it feel? And I do understand that your late mother um, also was a very popular singer and had recorded tracks for Salam Bombay. So tell us, what does it feel like to be part of that family and taking that legacy forward?
Honestly, I think when you're a kid, everything feels normal, right? Whatever you go through is your version of normal. So whenever anyone asks me, this is what I feel is the right answer because I had a normal childhood. I just had my normal childhood, which is probably different from your normal childhood or anyone else's normal childhood. I think it was probably when I was a teen that it really hit me, or when we moved back to India, it was a little more obvious that there was this whole big deal of legacy attached to all of us. And that is something that's really inspiring, but it's also something that can be stressful because it's something that you have to live up to every day. It's something that you're very proud of, but it's something that you're continually measured against.
Yeah.
But I think I was really fortunate growing up in the States early on because I could see the hard work part of it without having to deal with this issue of legacy as much.
Did you start learning classical music like, as a really young kid as well? Or is it something you took up later on in life?
So music was always a part of our lives. I mean, it wasn't even kind of you're going to start learning music now. We're just kind of enveloped in music, and honestly I don't know when we started learning music, me or my siblings, but my brothers and I, we were singing, we were playing the piano, we did a little bit of violin, one of us did a little more violin than the others, but we all had this kind of backdrop of music going on throughout our entire childhood without ever questioning it or saying that okay, this is something special that we're doing. It's very much an integral part of life.
And it's also something that you've passed on to your daughter, Mahati.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought that I'd be a musician. In fact, when we were in school together, I really wanted to be a lawyer. I think it was my obsession with John Grisham novels that took me there. But when I see my daughter, I feel the value of bringing art education into her life. And not just her life, I believe that it should be in the life of every child because I know how powerful a tool music can be to make your life better, to help with social emotional learning, to help with your understanding of self, to express your creativity, and also the kind of dedication and focus it takes to do anything well, to do any art form well, whether it's gymnastics or piano or singing or dance. You need to really be focused and need to be consistently hardworking. And I think those are very important skills for every child.
Very well said, Nubindu, because what you're saying is that any form of art, whether it is performing arts or it is the finer arts, requires consistent commitment and discipline. Like people think that, one fine day, just because you have a beautiful voice, you can become an amazing singer, but it doesn't work like that. It takes years, decades of practice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me another thing, as a mother and as a teacher, right? You also see a lot of parents saying that don't do this art, there is no future to it. Don't do that form of art. It's not remunerative in the long run. Don't waste your time, get a solid degree. So what's your take on that?
I really don't have any problem with parents telling their kids to get degrees. I think all kids should get degrees if they can. I'm very much in support of that. If my child were to tell me that she doesn't see a value in education, I would not be okay with that either. Having said that, being educated, having a degree, does not, in my mind, necessarily correlate with your ability to earn a sustainable living, because we don't quite know what jobs are going to be out there 10 years from now.
Yeah.
I was invited to give a TEDx talk a couple of months ago, and this was the whole point to me, that you don't know what you're going to be when you grow up, right? Look, you and I are prime examples of that. We are both reasonably well-educated people. We've gone through, good schools. We've had college educations, and yet what we're doing now has nothing to do with what we were trained to do.
Absolutely.
Our degrees are important because they gave us a good worldview. They taught us to work hard. They helped us understand the value of learning in general. But we're not really doing what we were trained to do. So if someone were to tell me now that it's really important for everyone to have an engineering or a law degree because how else will they earn their money, I disagree there. Get an engineering or a chartered accounting or a legal degree or a medical degree or whatever excites you at that point in time, but that's not the end of it.
Yeah.
And there's no reason in my mind why pursuing an art form seriously should prohibit you getting an educational qualification as well. Whether you want to do that bachelor's or master's in music, or you want to do music on its own and also do a medical degree, I think it's possible. And I know so many people who have done it.
So, which drives my next question to you. Can you make money out of, something you're passionate about? I mean, is there a way for people to, turn their passion into something that will also sustain the fires at home?
Absolutely. I think it is imperative going forward to create a sustainable livelihood out of things that you're passionate about. How you do that can be different for every person, because none of us are just one thing anymore. It's not about choosing between law and music or fashion and chartered accounting. It's about expressing our multifaceted personalities and pursuing different things that we're passionate about, and each of us constructing our own narrative that is unique. There are two things that will always be necessary, and that is passion and crazy hard work, right? It's great. Unless you figure that out, you're not going to get where you want to go, and you're not going to be fulfilled or satisfied.
So like a lot of parents I see that when it comes to allocating, their resources, and I can understand there is a limitation because, parents who are either on a salary or who have a business, your cash flows are fixed. Already school fees are very high. So when it comes to spending that little extra bit of dough on either, a science tuition or, a technical workshop or on a music lesson, okay, there is a disparity. Like the music may not be useful, whereas that extra science lesson on a topic that you may not actually explore later in life, okay, seems to be more relevant to the parent. So what's your take on that?
I feel that there is always a value for art and music education. I feel there are always going to be people who feel that it is relevant and it is important. And what we've seen through our work in schools is it's not only art for the sake of singing nicely or dancing or any of those things, right? If you look at what the workplace of the future will demand, what we refer to as 21st century skills, those are what people used to call soft skills, right? You think about critical thinking, you think about communication, you think about collaboration, all of those things, the 4 C's, right? You can build those through arts and music. What are we teaching? What are we teaching kids, or what do we need to teach kids in order to create successful environments for them, right? If we want them to succeed later in life, we need to give them skills to process whatever comes their way at that time, and we don't know what that's going to be. So if you're looking at making a child more employable, then maybe there is something beyond math tuition and science tuition which could help with that.
in this whole thing, okay, a term that I've heard you repeat a couple of times is, global citizenship, right? Uh, how do you think, in a time when there is so much of international music, literally invading our homes, right? How do you see in the balance Indian music overall uh, surviving with that? Because I know a lot of your music is, the idea of creating that kind of music is for it to reach out to more people, for it to connect with, the youth as well.
Yeah, so I don't think traditional music is in danger.
Mm-hmm,
Um, I feel that that's a thing that a lot of people say,
mm-hmm,
but I think there will always be audiences for good music. And when I say good music, any kind of music can be good music if it resonates with you.
mm-hmm.
I think this whole idea around preservation of culture really comes down to exposing kids to culture at a young age. And if we do, then we allow them to choose. But when you give them something later in life and you don't present it the right way, then it becomes alien to them and it becomes very hard for them to connect with it.
Um, so you are CEO of Sapa, right? And your brother is co-founder, technically, of Sapa right now. So tell me, what's it like when both of you all walk into, a meeting room? Do both of you all get treated equally? Does your reputation precede you, or have you seen challenges because you're not wearing the pants technically?
Well, I think all of us have faced challenges. Now I've reached the point where it's not as bad as it used to be. I think that could be because my hair has grayed out or people are more familiar with the work that I do. I'm not sure which of the two it is. But there have been situations where there's such a clear gender bias against women, and I think that that's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm,
Um, one instance is when a colleague of mine a few years ago had made an appointment with a preschool chain
mm-hmm.
for me to go and meet them. And I show up there, or actually, Ambi and I both showed up there, and this guy comes out and he's like, why have you come? And I'm like, well, the meeting was with me. And he's like, no, X called me and he was supposed to come. I said, no, he called for me and he's busy, but I'm his colleague. It's okay. It's not a big deal. He's like, oh, so X was so busy, he sent his colleague. Okay. And he made this like derogatory hand gesture as though this is what he sent. And being a person who's not really concerned about nomenclature and titles and things like that, I kind of lost it for a second. And I was like, you know what? Actually, he didn't send his colleague, he sent his boss. And if this is not okay for you, if you feel like this is a waste of your time, I can leave now. And it felt very icky for me to be in that situation because I am not by nature a confrontational person.
Yeah.
But at that moment, it felt like so much more than just who am I meeting today. It was about, it was about gender. It was about who are you? What right do you have? And, I felt like I needed to stand up and I needed to say something. So I think it's unfortunate that we have to work much harder to, to show that we deserve to be in the room or at the table.
I mean, it's something that's always made me curious, right? Now, I'd like to believe that the music industry is a place where, only talent speaks. But is it also a place where the gender pay gap does exist?
Yeah, for sure. Show me a place where the gender pay gap does not exist.
No, I mean that's a debate that we can go on about. But honestly, like, is it something that is also because from everything that I read and I understand, a couple of people that I do know in the entertainment industry, I understand that when it comes to acting, there is a massive gender pay gap. You'll hear Priyanka Chopra talk about it, and you'll hear the A-list actresses in the country talk about it. So how does the gender pay gap play out in the music industry?
I don't think it's as pronounced in the music industry. I think all musicians are underpaid always. So that's really great for women who are trying to be on par with men because everybody's getting a raw deal in the music industry most of the time.
Why is that?
But I honestly don't know.
No, as in why do you say they get a raw deal? Like, I mean, because this also follows up on that question. My parents say that, oh, don't become a singer or a musician. It doesn't pay well, right? So
I think a lot of it is around the way that laws were structured earlier, where contributions for different people were measured differently. So if you, for example, sang for a movie that went multi-platinum 30 years ago, you would get no royalty, whereas the composer and the producers and everybody else would get a big chunk. So things like that have been where singers have not gotten their fair share, and musicians who played on those records even less so. Record deals between labels and individuals have, traditionally, historically, not been very favorable towards the artist. I suppose that now things are changing and you have a much more direct access to your audience, and music is definitely a viable way to earn a sustainable, comfortable, wonderful livelihood. But I think gender pay gap is something that is very pronounced in areas where you're not direct to consumer, right? So in acting, it's really bad, and you find these huge differences. And even someone like Priyanka Chopra, who's totally on the top of her game, gets less than her male counterparts.
Yeah.
And I don't know the solution, but I think whatever we're doing across everything to create awareness will be the first step towards bridging those gaps.
So Bindu, tell me, as CEO of SAPA, how do you deal with, the money matters? Like, are you a very hands-on CEO? Are you someone who looks at the accounts books and, how comfortable are you with numbers?
Oh, I'm terrible. I dropped math after 10th standard. I'm typically bad. And I always been like, oh, the only numbers that I'm tracking are my numbers of students. And, that's kind of what I hold very close to my heart. But over the years, I have come to realize that in order to do good, I need to make sure that we are running effectively and efficiently, which means that I need to educate myself on the numbers, on the metrics, on what our output is, on things like lifetime value, on things like cost of customer acquisition, on things like, if I want to teach 100,000 children music for free, I need to be able to generate enough revenue to do that good work. So if I sit in a corner and don't know how numbers work, then that severely limits my ability to do good in this world. And that's the bottom line.
One thing I'm hearing consistently from a lot of women is that, oh, but we're here to do good. Why do we need to know numbers, right? Well, if you're not going to make money and you don't have money to spend on the things that you want to spend on, okay, even if it is charity or it is, like you said, outreach, how are you going to do it, right? So at what point did you realize that you were not comfortable with numbers? Like, only when you got to SAPA, or was it before that?
I dropped math after 10th standard. So 11th and 12th, I was very much an art student, and then I went into law. So math and I parted ways many, many, many years ago. And it was only when I started getting involved with running an organization that I realized that, okay, I need to be on top of this. And I've always had this desire as a person who's running an organization to say that I'm okay with being the dumbest person in the room. I need to have people that are smarter than me in their respective domains, because that's how I get better. But it is my responsibility to educate myself enough to ask intelligent questions to the people that are smarter than me. So I may not understand everything about marketing or finance, but I need to know enough so that I can survive and I can make sure that we're moving in the right direction.
So what you're fundamentally saying is that, even if you can't be an expert at finance, basic knowledge is a bare minimum if you have to do absolutely anything in life, right? And getting away with that, I mean, you don't get away with not knowing anything about finance.
And there's a lot of your self-worth in India can also be tied into the fact of whether you can support yourself, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it's really important to have at least an awareness of your financial situation, or how you can take care of yourself, or how you can protect yourself. You hear horrible stories every day about women who are staying in marriages because they don't have financial security otherwise, and it doesn't matter how much they earned before they got married. you hear about even sadder cases now where, you know, the husband has passed away because of COVID and the wife doesn't even know where they have bank accounts.
Yeah.
This is not acceptable. I mean, it's not that as a gender we've never been to school. It's a different thing if you're uneducated. But a lot of us educated women have issues with being financially literate.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that's kind of associated with this picture of the ideal woman being quiet and, you know, not ever thinking about money and not being concerned about things outside the kitchen. But that has to change. You know, we need to speak up for ourselves.
Yeah.
We need to be able to protect ourselves. We need to be able to protect our children. And in order to do that, we need to be educated in matters of practical importance. And finance is one of them.
So Bindu, tell me, where do you see yourself, like, you know, maybe in 10 years' time?
You know, I think part of not wanting to know what I want to be when I grow up is the idea of I still don't know where I'm going to be in 10 years. But I hope that in 10 years, I would have been able to give music education to a few million kids. And I hope that I would have been able to create a system that's robust enough to survive without me. And I think that the teacher training is critical for that, being able to create a generation of talented young musicians who feel that they can survive as musicians and as educators. That's very important to me. And hopefully 10 years from now, I'll look pretty young, and I will dye my hair consistently, and I can lie about my age, and I can continue to do things that excite me.
But yeah, thank you so much, Bindu. It's just been such a pleasure, you know, talking to you, because I don't know if you realize, but you've actually imparted so much of wisdom. Like, you know, I typically ask people if they have advice to give to the people who are watching, but you've just given us, you know, so many valuable lessons through your entire conversation. And if everybody else has learned from you as much as I did, I think, you know, my job would have been served.
This was fun, and I'm really grateful that you reached out and we had a chance to catch up. And I think what you're doing is so important. Really, thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much, Bindu, and thank you everyone for watching. Yeah, if you did enjoy our conversation as much as we did, do drop us a line. Thank you.